All right, we want to return now to one of our top stories. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick is walking back U.S. President Donald Trump's plans to impose tariffs on Canadian dairy and lumber this week.
Canada is supposed to have a free trade agreement with us.
Yeah.
250% on dairy products. It's outrageous, and you know the president's going to respond to it, but he's agreed not to respond until April 2nd.
Lutnick's comments contradict Trump, who said the U.S. would impose retaliatory tariffs on Canadian dairy or lumber today or tomorrow. Meantime, China is imposing new tariffs on Canadian agricultural products. With more, I am joined this morning by Ian Lee, Associate Professor at Carleton University Sprott School of Business. He's in Ottawa this morning. Ian, good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcia. My pleasure.
So what do you make of yet another tariff reversal from the Trump administration? And I'll add to my question by asking, yesterday it sounded as though this was all about a drug war. If you were watching the Sunday morning shows, that seemed to be the message coming from the White House front and center.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it is chaotic listening to President Trump because he is all over the map. I think it's more important to examine not the bark of President Trump, but the bite. And I'm just using a famous cliche. What I'm talking about is I think it's more important to watch and examine the actual executive decisions signed by the president because they are lawful legal instruments. That's the bite, you know, because he says all kinds of things. And we know that many of the things he says are wrong, or they're inaccurate, or he reverses himself or contradicts himself. That's why we've got to look at what he's actually doing. And that's the executive decisions imposed on particular products on particular countries.
Okay, so Trump's blanket 25% tariffs on Canada will resume April the 2nd. Over the weekend, again, Lutnick said the tariffs would be called off if fentanyl ends. Didn't offer any specifics, no metrics. How is Canada supposed to meet those demands if we don't know exactly what threshold is being set?
You're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, I have argued all along that we need to get to negotiations. And, you know, this ratcheting up, what we're in is a classic trade war right now. You know, Trump does make certain announcements, and so we have responded with retaliatory commitments with retaliatory tariffs. And then he responds with yet more retaliatory tariffs. And so I argue that this is unsustainable on both sides. This is not the exit strategy from this trade war we're in. The idea that we can just pile tariffs on top of tariffs on top of counter tariffs, I think most people will agree, is not the end game. The end game is going to require negotiations. It was Kissinger who said every war is ended by negotiations, not by yet more bombing and more wars. And so we need to get to negotiations and on a comprehensive basis. After all, it is required under CUSMA in 2026. And Trump said about 10 days ago, he's willing to bring that date forward. Yeah. I think what this is showing, the contradictions and the toing and the froing show the need to get to negotiations as quickly as possible to put everything on the table on both sides.
And then Trump's 25% tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum go into effect on Wednesday. Mark Carney, at some point this week, will be sworn in as Prime Minister. So what will you be watching for when it comes to handling the tariffs and Donald Trump?
Exactly. I watched the convention last night. I'm sure everybody did. I was really paying attention closely to former Prime Minister Chrétien, Prime Minister Trudeau, in terms of the tariffs. And I think we can, I hope we can apply the same critique I just did to Trump to Canada, to the Canadian government. There's rhetoric on the one side, and then there's our actual decisions, our policy decisions, our strategies on the other. I'm hoping that Prime Minister-elect Carney is going to be much more prudent and much more rational and base our decisions not on emotionalism, because there's so many angry people at Donald Trump, legitimately so. I understand why we're angry at him, but we don't want to cut off our nose despite our face. And so the question, in other words, more retaliatory tariffs that lead to more retaliatory tariffs by Trump and so forth in a downward spiral, in a death loop. I'm hoping that he says, look, we got to break out of this downward spiral. And I'm hoping he's going to do something dramatic. and say, look, we're calling on President Trump to start meeting, to set up a team on his side, and we'll set up a team on our side in the next 7, 10 days, 20 days, whatever, to start negotiating a new comprehensive deal that is not just a trade agreement. It will involve the border and these false allegations of fentanyl. It'll involve the border and illegal guns coming into Canada. It'll involve illegal immigration. So something much more comprehensive than just a trade agreement. Call it a treaty between Canada and the United States. That's what I'm hoping that Prime Minister-elect Carney is going to do.
All right. We'll see if both sides are open to that. Ian Lee, thanks again. Ian is an associate professor at Carleton University's Sprott School of Business. All right.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.